Thank you, Lambert. Good evening, everybody. My name's James Waterworth, and for those who haven't heard of it, I run the Brussels office of a trade association called the CCIA, which has offices in Brussels, Geneva, and Washington, and simply put, represents internet companies. And I could give you a list, but you will know many of the famous internet brands that we represent. And what I'm going to do is a little bit different from what our previous speakers have done, and I'm going to disobey the chair's instructions, because if I understood correctly, Lambert wanted us to be objective and quantitative, because I know the title is Measuring and Monitoring, but I'm going to be shamelessly qualitative, and I'm going to be subjective about the benefits of the internet. So you're going to have to forgive my bias and my slant, but that's the perspective I'm going to come at it from. And I'm going to go micro. So what I'm going to try and do is give you an impression of the way real people, real businesses, real stories are using the internet, and what this means, rather than the big numbers. And we started collecting these stories a few months ago, and we're going to publish some in a neat format, probably early autumn. So this is the first taste of what we're coming out with. You're the first audience. So I hope you like them. So I'm going to pitch this as describing a few challenges which businesses, society, various communities in Europe face, and see how internet platforms sometimes come to the rescue, or internet technologies. So number one, financial management, particularly for small businesses. Did you know that 75% of small businesses keep track of their finances using pen and paper? Sounds kind of scary, not least because if you follow up on that data, you find out that much of the financial administration is typically done by owners of small businesses without any specialist support, and that more than 50% of small businesses polled say that they have come very close to running out of cash or have run out of cash. 14% having been fined or subject to extra scrutiny for their accounting irregularities. So one of the simplest and emerging and most cost-effective ways to keep on the right side of the authorities is various software solutions to keep track of your finances. But increasingly, these are not just software solutions in the sense that you buy a package and you input your data. Increasingly, these allow a great deal of interaction. So first question to the room. Has anyone in the room heard of a company called Tradeshift? One who has reason to know, but no one else. So let me tell you about Tradeshift. Tradeshift is a Danish company. It's been running for 3 or 4 years, and I'm going to describe it as a social business software platform. Facebook style. Effectively, it's a Facebook for businesses. And the way it works, and this company is set up in Copenhagen, so maybe you can go and meet them after this event, is that they go and sell to large enterprises who've typically had software installed which enables them to interact with their suppliers, the people they deal with. But then that small company gets set up to talk to the big company, but is still left not talking to every other company in the world. So where this platform sets up, and they sell to big companies like DHL and Vestas and the NHS in the UK, is they set up the big company, they set up all the suppliers of the big company, who are then automatically connected to all the suppliers of all the other big companies. And it's an open platform. So what we see is increasingly applications being built on top of Tradeshift, which allow first and foremost e-invoicing, which is the primary application, which hopefully keeps the money rolling into the small businesses, but also allows all kinds of other applications which are useful to the business community to be written. And I think we can only begin guessing at where this might go. What we do know is it's accidentally enabled small business transactions between businesses in Europe and businesses in Malaysia. So it has unintended consequences, as all network effects do. Second challenge for small businesses, sales and marketing. So we all know that the cost of making yourself known to the world on platforms such as eBay has become much easier, much cheaper over the last 10, 15 years. And it's become much easier to export from your home market as a small business to other countries in the world. In effect, to become a micro multinational. Some of you may have heard of a business which is noted in the UK called Blue Water Sports, which sells sporting equipment. And this was set up in 2009 by an entrepreneur called Adam McKay. And within 4 years, this business has grown, first of all from having sold solely on ebay.co.uk to the point where it now employs 10 people, stocks 20,000 products, has a 7-figure turnover, and sells to 88 countries around the world. This is pretty impressive growth for a company of 10 people, and all enabled, of course, by the fact that it is trading on an internet platform like eBay, and also Amazon, by the way. But part of this, increasingly, is no longer just about having a shop window, but it's about the social nature of marketing. And there are some also fascinating examples of businesses using social platforms like Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and many others to transform the way they engage with their customers or potential customers. So, second question of the evening. Who knows what a dirndl is? One. I think you live there, don't you? So we have a few. Tillman, I think you come from that region. We have 4. 5. There we go. We've got 5 in the room. 6. Okay. 7. They're coming out of the woodwork now. So for those who don't know, the rest of the office, Dirndl. Thank you. The rest of the room who doesn't know, this is traditional Bavarian female costume. The type. Austria, we've got a dispute now. It's a nomination. Who's going to resolve this one? Anyway, wherever it's from, there is a company in Munich that has been making and selling dirndls for the last 63 years. So I call that pretty traditional business, selling traditional costumes. Now this company has been building up a fan club on Facebook and has in excess of 15,000 fans, which is now one of the primary ways in which they publish their new collections and engage with their potential customers. So an incredible slant on not just putting your material online on a platform and making it available online, but also the manner in which you engage with your customer base or your potential customer base. I don't know whether they export to 88 countries like Adam McKay does. I suspect the demand for dirndls is somewhat regional to Austria and Bavaria. And maybe Switzerland. Another example of a very traditional business is, and I definitely am not going to be able to say this, so you're definitely going to help out here, is a Polish antiques shop called Nasza Antiki, who sells, which is a business run by 2 families. And since 2008, they've been selling on an e-commerce platform called Allegro, which some of you will know and some of you may not. It's the leading e-commerce platform in Eastern Europe. And also using the Google AdWords system to enable them to target advertising, thus attracting customers not just from their region, which is what you might imagine might be the business model of someone who sold big, heavy pieces of wood and big, heavy furniture, but indeed from all over Poland and potentially internationally. So third example, third challenge, process innovation. So product development and consumer empowerment are increasingly going together as one thing. The ability to engage your customers, to find out what they want before you realise that they want it, or before they know they want it sometimes. And one very curious example of this is from a British chocolate maker called Cadbury, who began making a chocolate bar called Whisper in 1981. This is probably in Malcolm's constituency, I imagine. And they stopped making the Whisper, to some people's upset, in 2003. And in 2007, Facebook groups, more than one, started springing up calling for Whisper to be reintroduced. So this feedback is invaluable from the marketplace. I don't know how many thousand people were interacting in this way. But what happened was that by 2009, Cadbury had decided to reintroduce the Whisper. And indeed, they still engage with that community. So more immediate, lower cost engagement with your consumers and completely revolutionising the product development process for some people, and of course reducing the cost of that. But there are other innovations, for example, in recruitment, process innovations for companies. And recruitment is one of the most complex and often challenging areas and activities for companies. So there's a popular recruitment application which works on social sites like the 3 I just mentioned. There's an app, or rather there's a company called Work4 Labs. And Work4 Labs is a French company, some 70-odd people, who have developed an app which can plug into various corporate Facebook or LinkedIn pages called Work for Us. founded by a guy called Stéphane Levier. And to give you an example of how effective this is, Hard Rock Cafe apparently recently opened a branch in Florence. And they decided to take advantage of this social recruitment tool. And they managed to fill 120 roles in 4 weeks at 10% of the cost of a normal recruitment process. And part of the way they did it was to target people who had an interest in rock music. Seems blindingly obvious, of course, and extremely effective. And we also happen to think that, of course, when you have a particular problem of youth unemployment, then finding methods, finding applications which are particularly attractive and easy to engage with for the youth is obviously a good idea. Final challenge, inclusion. So internet platforms provide, particularly with regard to geography, a way of including people, whether in the economy or in society, in a way which is not otherwise possible. So one example, many of you will have heard of MOOCs, massive open online courses, university courses which are taught online. I know some people in the room have followed some. And they may, let's see, transform higher education. What they certainly do is to allow people who are nowhere near that university to follow a university course. Often it has been the case until now for free of charge. Completely changing the model in terms of if you have internet connectivity, you are able to access very high quality education. Some of the most prominent ones include edX, Coursera, but there's a very long list of platforms which are providing these kinds of courses. A couple of stats about Coursera. In the first 13 months of operation, they had 2.8 million learners. 2.8 million learners on their platform, which is 1.5 times the total student population of the United Kingdom. So it's very, there's big numbers of people involved. We're also seeing new models of consumption, collaborative consumption. You may have heard of services like Airbnb, which allow people who have spare rooms to rent out rooms to people who are looking for rooms, which reduce the costs. But I think one of the most interesting ones that I've come across is a platform called Etsy. And Etsy, for those who are not familiar with it, is a platform that specialises in people who want to sell handmade craft goods. So you have people who are good at making papers, or good at making jewellery, or making whatever it is, who set up on Etsy. And Etsy is no longer in itself a cottage industry. In May 2013 alone, Etsy was responsible for the sale of $102 million worth of goods and over 4.4 million items just in 1 month. So this is a serious amount of handmade goods being sold from all kinds of regions into the world to all kinds of other regions in the world through an internet platform. So it's a great place to look for gifts, which is currently my biggest challenge, because tomorrow is my wedding anniversary. And to be more precise, it's my 9th wedding anniversary. So given I've been looking on Etsy for presents, I thought I would see what I could find. And I could have bought some diamond jewellery from a Finnish designer selling on Etsy called Torkeli. I know that's the right pronunciation because my wife is Finnish and I speak Finnish. But seeing as our diamond anniversary is in 51 years' time, that would be a little bit too generous. So this being our 9th anniversary, apparently that's traditionally celebrated by a gift of pottery. So Etsy to the rescue. I'm going to buy something from a jeweller based in Saint-Malo in Brittany in northern France called Bailumi, at least that's her shop name, who specialises in porcelain jewellery making. So I think that's close enough to qualify for this year. And in case you're thinking this is small beer, you can't make a living out of this, there's a lady called Kimber Christensen, who's based in the US, who makes and now sells homemade, environmentally friendly wooden toys. And they have, over the last 5 years, sold close to 25,000 items on Etsy, which shows that you can, if you do it well, obviously make some kind of living from this. So, conclusions. What does this mean? Coming back to the Boston Consulting Group, I think one of the interesting things is you could conclude that everything off the internet is dead because there's so much interesting stuff going on the internet. But apparently it's not true, because my favourite term of the week is ROPO. I think you might be responsible for ROPO. And in case you're not familiar with it, it stands for Researched Online, Purchased Offline. And BCG figures on that show that in G20 countries, more than $1.3 trillion worth of goods in 2010 were researched online, purchased offline, which is higher than total online retail sales in all of those countries combined, which is kind of interesting, shows you the interplay between on and offline. So, to try to correspond to what the chair had asked for and what the title of the session is about, how should we better measure and monitor the value of the internet? A couple of modest recommendations. As a starting point, please, we must measure more than just that a business is internet enabled if it has a website. That's no longer enough, it's not sufficient. We need to understand transformation more broadly of businesses using digital technologies. We need to monitor mobile readiness. We need to monitor use of third-party applications and processes, use of social technologies, and exploitation of data. Secondly, let's support the rise of the micro-multinational and reshape the global trading system for the small guy, not just the big guy. Thank you.